Hey everyone, Nathan here, president of Saybrook University. Welcome to another episode of Saybrook Insights. Back when I first started at Saybrook University, some 8 years ago now as president, one of my first acts was to try and attend as many residential conference offerings as possible. These range from symposia to meditations to yoga sessions, all the way to class starts that entailed faculty lectures and group work. One of the most life-changing moments was walking into Dr. Kerwin Rockefeller's class on guided imagery. I can't remember all of the specifics now, but you'll have to trust me on the rest of the story. Essentially, during the time together, he instructed the class to close their eyes and walked us through a series of mental images, all the while asking us to check in with our bodies, how we were feeling, what we were thinking, what was happening. He did this at the start, during, and at the end, those questions, kind of check-ins. What emerged for me was very interesting. As I started the session, I was fairly stressed. There was lots of travel. Here I am at this new institution in this kind of weird setting. It wasn't quite making sense. I mean, from the Midwest, I had a little skepticism about this whole mind-body thing. It's just trying to make sense of all the new stuff and, kind of trying to shelve that skepticism, keep it at bay. So I went with it. During and after the session, I found myself starting to slowly relax as I went on this mental journey, letting go actually. And then at the end, I felt this powerful release, a sense of peace. My heart had slowed. My mind was a bit more centered. Things just felt better. And then I attended some of the sessions related to biofeedback and in real time saw how when applying certain meditation techniques, guided imagery, etc., one could literally lower their heart rate and blood pressure through non-medical means. Now I could go on and on about this, but we'll hear more about this in a moment. I did, however, adopt a mindfulness meditation practice out of this initial experience, and it stayed with me over the years with many positive results. It's like a door swung open for me on how to manage my anxiety, the critical self-talk, as well as just to slow down, think more carefully, cautiously in terms of just being in that moment, taking care of me. Mindfulness meditation is seen as one of those techniques that has greater and greater evidence supporting the clinical outcomes. Now, it's true, it could be still seen as a placebo, but there's some there. And I think the exciting piece around this is that there is biofeedback evidence, that psychophysiology piece to this that really seems to be bringing this into full light amongst many other areas in these biofeedback psychophysiological domains. Enter Dr. Taylor Capozziello, Saybrook alumni and graduate of the Ph.D. psychophysiology program. She's dedicated her professional work to understanding the mind-body connection, and I think we have a great place to start. What's more, her background in the sciences and commitment to ongoing research in this area allows for some real fertile ground for us to cover today, including the low intervention techniques to health and wellness. I love her energy. I know you will too. So we're going to dig into that and more. Let's get started with Dr. Taylor Capozziello. Dr. Capozziello, what a joy to have you joining me today on Saybrook Insights. Before we get started, tell us about yourself, your personal history as it relates to your work, and how you wound up here at Saybrook University for your degree and all that good stuff. So take it away.
Well, it's always quite a journey, right? I don't think there's one person that's going to come to Saybrook that hasn't had quite a journey to get here. And so for myself, I was a psychology background massage therapist for 18 years. My body was starting to give out and I knew that I needed to do something else. And so I started looking into what that was. I went back to my undergraduate school and I got into biofeedback doing that with Dr. Eric Pepper. And at that time, he knew about Saybrook University and he was trying to get me to come in and do that for my doctorate. I was still thinking master's level at that moment, but he kept pushing me. And a series of events led that's what I wanted to do. Through my biofeedback work, I had gone to a conference for psychophysiology, and I met a whole bunch of students there, and they were all my people. And I realized that this is who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. So, so that's kind of in a nutshell of how I ended up here.
I mean, that's pretty fabulous. So you were inspired by Dr. Pepper at San Francisco State University, is that correct?
Yeah.
And when you found your way to Saybrook, what was it that really drew you to the program?
I was actually fighting it for a while because I thought I really wanted to go into a master's program at San Francisco State, and things just kind of kept going against me for it, and the path kept getting easier and clearer for Saybrook. At first, I just didn't know a lot about it. It wasn't, I was like, no, I want to go to a brick and mortar school, and that was really important to me. But then after I ended up meeting the people that would be my colleagues and my classmates and my teachers, I realized that this school had, everybody that I wanted to get to know and learn from. And the school that I was going to, brick and mortar, was not having that for me. So that it kind of ended up pushing me in that direction, and Eric ended up winning on that one.
Eric Wilmarth wins hands down in a lot of ways. So, Taylor, I'd like to really understand. I mean, I kind of know, but I think for our general audience out there, what is this psychophysiology stuff, right? That we hear about. It sounds kind of mysterious and strange. How would you describe it to the layperson, to the everyday Joe or Jane that's out there?
So when I talk about it, I really like to break down the two words because it sounds really fancy if we say it fast, but it's not if we slow it down. So we have psychology and we have physiology. And so with my massage background, looking at the physiology of the body and how the body works. And then we have psychology, which was my undergraduate, and we're looking at how the brain plays a role in it and how they work together. So it's really looking at the whole body. We're having, a holistic approach when we look at psychology and physiology together. There's a lot of different approaches for it. In my particular practice, I'm either looking at the body using biofeedback, which is using sensors to pick up, any it could be heart rate, could be breathing, it could be muscle activity. So an easy example is placing a muscle sensor on your shoulder, and then as you tense it up, the person sees on the screen, sees their muscle tense up, and then as they relax, it goes down. And what the majority of my clients are is neurofeedback, which is a form of biofeedback. We're looking at the neurons in the brain and how they're firing instead of muscles. And I start by looking at a QEEG of a head. So I have my little example over here where we actually put on a whole cap, and from that cap we have 19 sensors on it, and we're able to see 19 different spots on the head. You can go a lot more depending on what cap you use, and we're able to see what's going on the head in a very real time and what we expect to see where and why. So, we see just like the color spectrum, we have spectrums of waves. So in the color spectrum, we go across in a rainbow, and in the head, we go from slower waves in the delta band or slower, and then we go into the gamma frequencies. And in different regions of the head for different tasks, we expect to see certain things, to be able to turn on and off and see a flexibility. And by looking at the actual brain or the body, we're getting a really good baseline of how people are in their resting state or how they're responding to certain situations, and then being able to come up with a program to help them based off of that. And it doesn't mean something's wrong. We can do it for peak performance as well.
Oh, interesting. So maybe talk about that a little bit then. Where are the biggest opportunities or areas where psychophysiologists play in? You talk about peak performance. You talked about or referred to, it doesn't have to be something wrong, but could also be in just an area where you're trying to improve slightly in a particular area, such as maybe anxiety or maybe it's not wrong, but you're trying to reduce that level. So maybe speak a little bit about the places you play in as a psychophysiologist.
Honestly, it ends up being everywhere, which sounds so snake oil because I'd say that's the biggest downfall, right? And so because we're talking about peak performance and we're not talking about diagnoses, a lot of areas can be improved. So say somebody is having a major issue with depression, anxiety, PTSD, and even if we're not targeting those exact things, of which usually we do, but even if we weren't, we usually start with improving a person's sleep. And once a person's sleep starts improving, well, then their brain's going to be able to start to repair itself just naturally and start to improve and to learn better. So that alone is going to make these huge changes for a person. And we haven't even started to address the actual thing that they came in for if it wasn't sleep. So it can kind of be literally almost anything, but we don't make claims for everything. So we really keep it down to what the science shows for efficacy levels. So ADHD has a high level of efficacy. It's one of the things that we commonly work with. ADHD can present 8 different ways in the brain. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of people that might all have ADHD and they sit and they talk and they don't all have the same signs and symptoms because they have different ways that it's presenting. On top of that, I believe it's 25% of people with ADHD, if not more, actually have sleep issues as well. So once again, we start with sleep and then we'll target those specific areas that we see of what type of ADHD presentation they were. That can be one. It can be kind of endless on it. Then there's other ones that have smaller case studies that are going to be smaller, that if a client called me up or a potential client and they said, I'm having this issue, does biofeedback work for it? Well, I'm going to be really clear that we don't have enough literature to support that. But if they'd like to come in for other things, anxiety, starting to kind of calm their overall arousal and getting control over their body, and then seeing how it affects them, we can go that route. But always wanting to be clear and not say that it does not treat or cure everything. It just helps everything.
No, that's fair. I'd like to get into in just a moment who often goes into this area or discipline, subdiscipline. But I want to spend a moment still with this, how you work with clients or patients. So let's say you have someone coming in with ADD or ADHD rather, and they say, I need help. I mean, normally what we hear is, a lot of these individuals are on drugs. So would you be looking to change the regimen? Would you be looking to augment that? Not exactly how they would present in a particular, clinical setting with a psychophysiologist. So maybe walk us through what that might look like and maybe some of the success stories or things around that you've seen that have been most impactful from your perspective.
Well, everything's always going to come down to what you're licensed in. So different psychophysiologists are going to have different backgrounds. For myself, I'm not licensed to diagnose. I can only train. I can't treat. But I do often work with a long list of MDs, other neurologists, and other people. So I always partner with other people that are going to be able to diagnose and work with or work under as needed. For ADHD, different clients come with different things. Sometimes they're coming because they actually want to know what medication to be on. And since I do partner with psychiatrists, then those psychiatrists will have me do a QEEG. And Jay Gunkelman is one of the many people, including several others, that have papers out on the EEG phenotype and medication prediction. So we'll look over their EEG, those brain waves that we were talking about, that we collected, and we can get an idea of what medication they're either likely to not respond well to or respond well to. And then I can make those suggestions to the psychiatrist, and then they'll take that into account. So, for example, I had one client that came to me, I believe he was a 13-year-old boy at the time, and he was coming in with a long list of things, including ADHD, including rage, and when I looked at his EEG, we're actually seeing epileptic form discharges over his emotional processing area, and when we see that, we realize that, he was blanking out. He was having these outbursts that he was not having a memory of. And so with his psychiatrist, we recommended him being on an anticonvulsant. He was put on an anticonvulsant. It immediately stopped that, and then all of the rage, and he was able to focus in school. He was sleeping much better. And then we were able to continue our neurofeedback training, because sometimes a person wants to be put on medication but not stay on it forever. So then we start doing the longer part, the training, kind of like as if you're going to go to a gym to get a six-pack. You have to change other things like your diet, you have a workout regime. The only difference is for neurofeedback, once you get this six-pack, you have it. You don't have to keep doing an upkeep on it. So it takes a lot of work. So some people want to be put on medication, which can be faster, and then actually do the work to build that brain muscle and then slowly taper off the medication between myself and their psychiatrist. So that's kind of one example that showed everything all in one of them.
That is so cool. I mean, like that you've just like pulled out like this amazing, it's not even a metaphor, it's the reality. You're a trainer essentially for the brain, and you're working in partnership with the medical community to really support the health and well-being, maybe bringing some people off drugs, medications that they would like to get off of, and do more with their own manipulation of their mind to help them get stronger. I just, that is so interesting.
It's really fun. Every brain is really fun. In fact, right before this call, my partner who, we just had COVID, and so he still has it. And so I had him come in so I could do a QEEG on his brain to see what his brain looks like having COVID. And, was able to also measure event-related potentials to see how fast his brain responds to things as well. So it's just really fun when you can actually start looking at the organ that people are wanting to alter, or at least to better understand it, whether it's the body, the brain. We can kind of come up with a hypothesis, and then we get to test it, even if it's on a small scale, and you can make your partner be the number one guinea pig for it.
Hey, that's pretty awesome. Yeah. I'm interested. I was with our board of trustees early on in my time here at Saybrook, and we were talking about psychophysiology. They were wondering, because we were really bringing the program forward after several years of just starting out. And, I'm describing it. Dr. Wilmarth, who heads up the program now, was describing it. And one of our trustees said, "That sounds like an iWatch to me."
Yeah.
Isn't it really just about wearable technology?
It is. It's partially, and that's going to be the future. It's going that way, and it's going to keep improving, and more people are going to know about it. It's been around for a while, and it's really just taking off right now. So this is the best time to be in it.
All right. That's pretty fabulous. So Apple or Android folks, like manufacturers, if you're listening, Taylor Capozziello is ready for your sponsorship, as is Saybrook University. So when someone's using an iWatch, or I have a Samsung watch, I'll give the folks in the audience an example from my life. So I'm looking at my watch, and if I see my heart rate, I'm in a meeting, right? And I'm like, say it's a heavy topic, and I'll look down and I'm like, oh my God, my heart rate is like starting to go way up. And I'm like, I need to do some deep breathing. I start breathing more, thinking, less about like how anxious I am, and thinking more happy thoughts. And suddenly my heart rate starts to decrease, and then decrease exponentially. And I learned this trick, by the way, from Eric Wilmarth, that you can regulate your heartbeat, right? So heart rate variability and how you can manage that. What other techniques can you do with wearable technology, and how is the psychophysiology profession leveraging wearables right now, or are they, and what is out there that could be leveraged differently?
With wearables, there's a whole bunch of things out. One of the things that I'm most excited about is by a company called iSync, and they've developed a helmet that is I think it's the iSync Wave that was just at the CES show this last year. And it is a helmet that actually goes on just like what I was showing you here, but this has all these sewn in, and we have to use gel for it. So far, that's been the best way, because the dry electrode sensors just haven't been good enough yet. This one's showing a lot of promise, and it wirelessly connects to the phone. So an untrained person or an MD doctor could put it on somebody's head, gather data, and then have it go to their database, run it through. And it also is linked up with doing photomodulation. They're going to make it so it can do neurofeedback right away, as well as other stimulation technology. So I do feel like they're the leader in it right now for the neurofeedback aspect of it, but they're not alone. There's a lot of people that are fighting for this. They're just the ones that I've been most impressed with so far. I've seen years ago a wearable shirt that had SEMG sensors in it. So as a person moves that they're actually, it's giving feedback. I haven't seen it for working well though, but I think that it's going to be something that, if we think about eventually, if that were to work, a new tennis player could put something on, have the program tell them what muscles are supposed to use, what muscles are supposed to let go of, and then start training them how to use their muscles correctly. And it's pretty cool if we think about that. So that one's not really good yet at all. I've seen the shirt, but it's never made it anywhere. But the future is there. I am, right next to Silicon Valley, so I'm always waiting for new things to come out. And ultimately, the rudimentary of the equipment's not that hard to make, but it ends up being hard with a whole bunch of other, sweat and movement and those things. So it will get there though. Right now, there's even a posture thing where you just put the posture on your back and it tells you on your phone, it alerts you when you start slouching over after a period of time. So even something as simple as that. But even like you were talking about on our phones, they'll do little reminders that will tell us certain things. And I think that's going to be the future of having our phones or devices tell us what's going on with our body when we stop paying attention to it for too long.
Oh my goodness, I could use the slouch-o-matic or whatever it is. I'm terrible at that, so no, that's terrific. I was just thinking, so I'm a former classical musician, and during my time performing and in the music industry, there was often talk about how to, think about and do music performance better. And as a trombonist, for example, so many trombonists were struggling with embouchure problems with their lips, facial dystonia, if you're familiar with that issue where the face kind of collapses. My instructor, my professor of trombone actually lost all movement in one side of his face and his career was ended. And interestingly, he started going to someone who specialized in biofeedback and sport performance medicine and realized that for years he was tensing and doing things with his muscles that were actually, countering just good posture, good practice, and possibly did permanent damage. So he had to reorient his life around this. What you're talking about is really impressive and interesting, I think, in terms of the long-term implications for folks. Are you seeing that with different professions like musicians in addition to athletes?
Yeah, it can be. So even like the example you were just saying, one part could be, the very first thing I always address is breathing, because if a person's not breathing correctly, well, then nothing else kind of matters, because a person is oftentimes bracing instead of breathing correctly. So first we get that down. And then if there's any residual stuff going on, then we can place muscle sensors. And so for the example you're saying, we'd put them on different areas of the face, have them learn how to properly turn them on and off. But I'd also be curious to look at the brain to see for learned disuse for any area. And sometimes even just doing stimulation. I not only do feedback, but I also have a lot of fun with stimulation and running and playing with electricity, PEMF, and all sorts of other things. So, we can actually just kind of stimulate that area and help get it back online as well.
I wouldn't put that on your business card that you like playing with electricity. She's legit, everyone. She.
Yeah, everything I use is FDA approved. There's plenty of things out there that are not, and I never recommend those, of course, because it is important that we're making sure, that everything is safe and that you're having someone that knows what they're doing do it. So that's why Saybrook's really important. I do hear about people that get a hold of this equipment somehow outside of getting a degree in it, and it always worries me. Like they went to some weekend workshop and bought some equipment. I'm like, I would not trust somebody doing this that didn't have a degree or some good understanding in it. And that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about Saybrook, is that it really builds a foundation for people. So I know anyone that goes to Saybrook, I feel very solid about.
You are absolutely right. You and your colleagues and our faculty really do a fabulous job of, the ethical side and also the training side. So making sure those two are merged together in a meaningful way. So maybe just for a couple minutes, talk about your journey through the psychophysiology program. For those out there who are interested in this, we can get into the those who are licensed, like who it makes sense for, who it might not make sense for, but really talk about the degree program itself. What are some of the big picture things that you learned in your time during the PhD, and what was the PhD all about?
Yeah, so for me, I feel like I both had a blessing and a curse because I was in the very beginning of it. I had come from Eric Pepper with a really extensive background in biofeedback already, so I was very well versed in that. But because this program was so new when I entered in, so many people in the neurofeedback psychophysiology field that already had their careers built, published papers, and were exceptional, were very excited to get their PhD and entered into this program. So all of my classmates were these people that had so much more knowledge. They'd already been in this field for 10 plus years than myself. So I did feel really dumb for a lot of the time, but they also helped push me and made me grow, and it was really nice. And so I think that now when I watch people and everybody's on the same path learning together, it's really nice. But it is kind of nice sometimes when you have a whole bunch of people that make you feel always behind, because then you push yourself a lot harder, right?
It's so true. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And the program itself just really opened my eyes to a lot of things. I did not come in thinking that I was going to fall in love with the brain as much as I did. I was really about the body and breath. My background involved classical dressage, which is also about center of gravity for horseback riding. My dad's a 10th degree black belt in karate. And so once again, about breathing. I studied under Eric Pepper. He is all about breathing. And so my background came in being about breathing and biofeedback, 18 years massage therapy, but I just ended up loving so much about how the brain worked and wanting to know it more, and probably devote the next 18 years of my life to that part, and then probably, after, at this end, I'm going to have a nice balance, I suppose. But yeah, Saybrook opened me up to all of that. But ultimately, the thing that I loved the most was honestly the people, because it's such a diverse background of people with different backgrounds coming together and bringing to the table different things. When you're in an undergraduate program, everybody's kind of all, we're not really coming in with much. We don't really have much to offer each other. But by the time that you're in a graduate program, we've all had lives, and we're really going to learn from each other and build lifelong friendships. I graduated college, and I had one friend that I made from college for undergraduate, and I don't even know how many people that are now my lifelong friends from going to Saybrook.
That's a great testimonial right there for the university and the program. And, I think the scary part for a lot of folks, whether it's psychophysiology or psychology or mind-body medicine or any graduate degree for that matter, is the dissertation. Is it scary? Or you got through it and you did just fine. So maybe illuminate that for our audience here. What was that like for you?
Well, it's funny. I think about always, even going back to undergraduate, I remember when I was trying to come up with my major, and my mom said, who at that time she worked in a corporate job, and she said, corporations don't care what your major is. They just want to see that you learn how to jump through all the hoops and that you made it out alive. And I think sometimes about the dissertation, to a certain extent, it's that, because it takes a lot of work, and it's a really exciting process of coming up with a hypothesis. It is very emotional because you come up with this hypothesis, you put all this work into it, and then it fails. And then you do that again. And it can sometimes break you a little bit just because you think, I remember when I first looked at this, I was like, I'll get done through this so fast. I already know what I want my dissertation to be on. I got it. Easy. I can write a paper. But you realize that, the world is not everything that you think it is. And that's part of doing these studies and these controlled studies and learning that. And, now it's so funny. If somebody asked me to write another dissertation, I do think I could do it so much better. You really could. You could write a second dissertation so much easier. And you also learn to take out some of your heart from it. And I say that in that way of that it doesn't define you, that this is a learning process. That's what the whole point to me of a dissertation is. It's not about you solving a world mystery, but you starting to understand something, you starting to pick apart something, come up with a question, and see, does this mean anything? And maybe it does, and maybe it doesn't. And a lot of times it doesn't, and that's okay. And then
Well said. Well said. Seriously, graduate students all over the world, listen to what Taylor Capozziello just said. That's fabulous. Yeah. Keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Really, I think ultimately the thing that I learned the most about writing my dissertation was how to write. And when I came in, I was a very weak writer, and I left feeling very strong in my writing. And it's really funny to look back at my beginning writing and at my end writing. And I did a lot of work to get there. I hired a private tutor. I took other classes in scientific journal writing, but ultimately now my writing has changed drastically, and I couldn't even visually see it before. So when you're writing a dissertation, it's a very specific type of writing, and being in any field that you're going to want to read scientific journals is really important that you understand how to read them and how to write them and what goes into it as well.
Yeah, and you've really emphasized some important points there. I think what I try and remind students and faculty in graduate level education is students don't come to us typically knowing and being perfect at writing. In fact, they're coming to graduate school to do exactly what you did, to learn how to write scientifically or empirically, to get better at that exploration and research and scholarship. And I think you just hit the nail on the head so well in terms of how to really come at this. I had a graduate doctoral advisor who used to say, the more you know, the less you know.
Yeah.
The more you think you know, the less you actually do know. And that's the beauty of graduate education. Someone said in a pro seminar I was in, they're like, so I just paid $100,000 to figure out like what I didn't know is actually not, oh, wow, I'm not sure why I'm in this. But what he was meaning to say is that you come into it with more humility and you come out more, refined and thinking differently, and also writing better, doing things in a different fashion than you did when you came in. So, wow, great way to put it. It's like you should be on graduate faculty somewhere.
I've enjoyed being on the alumni council and being there for graduates. So when they do leave and graduate, that we have the council that is there for trying to make it that we have another step and keep us connected. So very, very important on that too. A little plug.
There you go. So alumni, get with Dr. Capozziello. She's ready and waiting for you to join and to get moving. And for those of you who are just ready to graduate, November is your commencement ceremony here in Pasadena. So quick plug, November 10th in the morning. So we'll see you there, hopefully. Taylor, I want to close this out here with a couple big questions. I really love your energy, and I really appreciate what you bring to the profession and to just your general work and research. So I want us to close out today with two remaining questions that I ask of all my guests, and I think you're probably going to have an interesting take. You're my first alumnus, for Saybrook Insights in a long, long while, especially with this reboot. So the first question is, what does the term humanistic mean to you?
It means psychophysiology. It's an approach of looking at it for each person. So, the DSM-5 is something that categorizes people on their signs and symptoms, but it actually doesn't talk about what's going on for that person individually. And so with psychophysiology, we're not looking at that necessarily, and we might take that in and add it into what's going on, but we're seeing how is that person responding. How is their body responding? What's their recovery time? Things like that. And we're getting a better picture from it. So to me, humanistic psychology is psychophysiology.
It's looking at the whole person and all the inputs, right? Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And last but not least, so with all the challenges that are out there today, we've got a lot going on in this world, politically, socially, culturally. What are three things people can do from the Dr. Capozziello advice column that they can do to take control of their mental health?
There is a long list of things, but ultimately, I think the most important thing is, good sleep hygiene. If we're not sleeping correctly, then nothing else is going to be working. Our brain's not going to be working correctly. Our body's going to start to deteriorate. A lot of people think they're sleeping correctly, but they're not. And so we want to make sure that we're having good sleep hygiene, and good practices might be blacking out everything around us, making sure that other things are unplugged and that we're sleeping well. The other thing, which sounds so silly, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying don't be depressed, but find things that make you happy, and that's really all that matters. So, if you are feeling really depressed, that thing that might make you happy might just be really soft sheets on your bed. That it might just be that. And you know what? If you have sheets that aren't soft and they're not making you happy, burn them. But, finding those things that keep us going, keep us happy, because one of the things that I love so much is I travel the world all the time. And when I go to other countries like the Philippines and people are living in what I would deem extreme poverty, they are so happy. You don't need stuff to be happy. It's nice, but ultimately they're being happy as a community and being there for each other. So finding those things that make us happy. And then the third thing I would just say, because those are the main ones, but adding on, going back to the sleep, is making sure that you drink enough water. You're having your needs met, makes your skin look good. That makes you happy. And you're hydrated. And really, we have those three things as a base, and we're going to be able to build off of them with everything.
I'm going to make a commitment to you today, Dr. Capozziello, because I'm terrible with sleep hygiene. I don't drink enough water. I clearly drink way too much coffee.
64 ounces plus, 64 to 100 ounces of water a day. You can just do it. So I get this, and I make sure by 11 a.m. it's done. And then by the time I leave home for work, that the second one's done. And then when I get home, I have another one at home, and I make sure that I finish that one off.
That is fabulous. Okay, so I am motivated to do that. And I'm going to go home tonight and burn my sheets.
Yeah.
I'm motivated.
Bamboo sheets. They're good. Bamboo.
Oh my God, Phil, our producer, Phil, we need product placement. Bamboo sheets. Here we go. All right. Dr. Capozziello, Taylor Capozziello, thank you for being here today on Saybrook Insights. It has been a pleasure. I love your energy, love your commitment to your profession and to your beloved university, Saybrook University. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, did I not say you would love her energy? Taylor, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed Dr. Capozziello as much as I did. Remember her three major takeaways: sleep hygiene, find joy and happiness like in soft sheets, and drink plenty of water. I mean, they're basic but important. If you want to see the video segments, we've created these on our YouTube page, and you can access these anytime. And if you'd like to support the podcast, which I really hope you will, go to Apple iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and review, and subscribe so you can get episodes as they come out every Monday. If you're on Spotify, leave that 5-star rating and make sure to follow us. And you can, of course, subscribe to us on most major podcast platforms, including Google, Stitcher, Pandora, and many others. Remember to check out our show notes for today's information on our guest, including links to websites, books, etc. For more about our psychophysiology program, go to www.Saybrook.edu, click on Areas of Study at the top of the page, and locate the program to learn more. Or simply Google Saybrook University Psychophysiology Program or Saybrook University Biofeedback. That's it for now. I'll see you all in a bit. Take care and be well.